Welcome to Round the Rotary with me, JP Warren. And with us today, we got a good buddy of mine, Dan Disser, who's the drilling
Best friend.
best friend. Thank you for that correction. I was going to add that in post-recording, but thank you for doing that. Dan Disser, best friend / drilling manager at Headington Energy Partners. How you doing today, man?
Doing well, man. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Just trying to stay busy, trying to put some social media, trying to just stay relevant. Trying to stay relevant right now during this quarantine. That's only I guess people in sales can do right now is kind of just try to stay in front of people. So hey, let's kick this off. I know we got a lot of good things to talk about today. Why don't you start off with a little background about yourself, what you feel like sharing, what's relevant, what's not, and kind of bring us up to date where you are right now.
Sure. I'm going to try to take as much time as I can on this. So people
what else we
listening,
have to do?
Yeah. So people listening, just tune out before we get to the hard questions. So I'm at Headington Energy Partners now. Been there for coming up on 2 years now. Before that, I was at Anadarko. Started out as a drilling engineer and then ended up becoming the engineering manager. Before I left there, worked South Texas, West Texas, Deepwater, Gulf of Mexico, went back to West Texas and moved to Midland, was there for 8 months, and then came out to Dallas with Headington. Before that, I worked for a directional company straight out of school. Got a communications degree from UT, graduated 2007, went to work for a directional company, left in 2009, went to Texas Tech for petroleum engineering and graduated in 2012 and then started with Anadarko.
So what was that decision making? That's an interesting, path. I mean, you started off, I guess, what were you doing for the directional company?
Before I left, I was a DD, directional driller. Started out as a MWD, and I went to school thinking, just get a degree. Someone's going to pay me $100,000 a year as soon as I get out of school. That ended up not being the case. The offers that I got in sales were probably pretty good. I just thought that I could make more money for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, so got a couple offers to do from Republic,
the beverage. Yep. I think everyone that starts off out of college, they entertain that idea. I think that's like the sweet spot for them. It's like, hey, you want to continue the party? Come work and party. Yeah.
And then a company called Wolseley Ferguson. They do like fixtures, like plumbing type fixtures, and I don't know, whatever. Anyway, so wasn't super interested in either one of those. I think starting salary, which probably is or equivalent, whatever it was like 60 or something like that, which is pretty good. But
yeah,
I
as
guess
a graduate, yeah.
I guess I thought I was living in a la la land, I guess.
Well,
but
I'm more talking about going from a DD and saying, I want to go back. I'm going to go back and get my PE at Texas Tech. Like that was such a great shift and an interesting shift in your mindset.
Yeah. So I ended up, reaching out to friends of friends to get that job, and it was actually at MS. And I had never seen a rig before. I got a bunch of stories about, me starting out, which are pretty funny, but just seeing this whole industry just, all of a sudden and how things are done in the field and stuff like that. And it was just kind of like, I was shell shocked, but also really interested in the technical things that I was doing,
Right.
Like at that time, I think the highest math I took was statistics in high school. I mean, I didn't have to take any math for communications. And so, and I always kind of stayed away from it because everyone, people are like, hey, Matt, algebra is hard, calculus is hard.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. You naturally
Yeah.
back down from challenges, and then you fear.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
people tell you that, and you're like, all right, well, I don't want to, I don't want to kill myself trying to, do that. So anyway, so I realized that I did like all this technical stuff that you had to do, and it wasn't super technical, but I wanted to know more about it and all that. So um, it got, I think early '09. That's kind of when it started. We started the downturn from,
right.
and so I think I made it, through like 3 or 4 cuts, and I was like the youngest guy still there. And I think at some point in time, I asked my boss, and I was like, look, like, I'm the least experienced out of the people you still have left. Why don't you let me go? I've kind of made the decision to go back to school. And that was, I say I just made that decision, but it was probably like a 3-month period where I was like, oh shit. And I started to save a bunch of money, just after making it through all these cuts. And, talked to a bunch of people, was looking for other things, didn't really like any of them. And my uncle, who's in the industry, he was like, look, if you like the technical stuff, why don't you go back to school? You got a bunch of money saved, and you think you might like the engineering stuff, like, why don't you just do that? So it was probably like a 3 or 4 month period where I thought it over, and and then eventually asked my boss to do that. He said sure. So I was able to get kind of unemployment while I started going back to school, which was good. And like I said, I hadn't taken a math class since statistics in high school, so it'd been like 7 years. So I was pretty nervous, but I mean, it was very, very difficult for me.
To switch to go from student to go from out
Yeah,
working in the field to student mode, switching that mindset. And so I think that's pretty impressive that you got both. I mean, you have both viewpoints from the service side and also from the operator, which I think is just, I mean, can't teach that in school, as we say.
I think I definitely think it's useful, and it helps. Um, kind of it kind of helped just build my um, philosophies on things and how I deal with service companies and sales guys and stuff like that. So
Well, let's go into that a little bit. Let's talk about those philosophies when you're looking over a bid or when you're selecting a service company, and you can speak to that, and then we can kind of go into, like, is that same philosophy going to graduate into the future? I mean, once things start ramping up again. I mean, so go into your philosophy right now when you're picking a service provider.
um, you know, I guess there's a couple different classifications of service companies, but in general, um, I'm not a, and I don't want to like call it like a rig up type guy, but since they do, these kind of mass RFPs, and go out and get bids for you and things like that. I don't. I'm not in general. I'm not a like let's go with the lowest bid company type of engineer.
Right.
So my philosophy is, I guess it would, there's a lot of different circumstances, but as it stands, where I am, where I do know a lot of different companies, um, I try to pick the one that either I have a relationship with. I mean, they still need to be in the ballpark cost wise, but that's not my bottom line. Like, um, people are my bottom line. So I think I'm a decent judge of character uh, when it comes to that. And so when I meet a new company, or new sales guys or whatever, um, I try to gauge what their work ethic is, like how smart they are, how much time they take, talking to me about what they do and what their company does and how they differentiate themselves and things like that. Um, and then, I try to build a relationship with those guys eventually, but but picking them outright, I think a little bit all those things, cost cost comes into play, but I don't mind paying a little bit extra money for a service that I know is going to be good, that one in which the company is going to be, and the sales guy is going to be completely transparent. He's going to work. He's going to communicate. He's going to work through problems with me. He doesn't care about me calling him at 2 a.m. because something's wrong. So, and I guess some of that falls in the trust category. Like,
Right.
I need to be able to trust that a guy's going to pick up the phone and that he's going to do as much work as I'm doing, trying to fix a problem or work through a problem.
So if you went with let's say it was a low cost mentality, what have you seen previously that could? I mean, is that just kind of what you pay for what you get?
Yeah, I mean, like, not always. So there's always exceptions to the rule, but I mean, the times that I've gone just lowest bid, and it's been a while since I've just straight up gone with somebody just because they're lowest. And again, like, I do want to, like, make a point that
Yeah.
there's some things that, I mean, so like dumb iron type stuff, I don't mind going with lowest bid
Right.
because it is what it is. It's just tools, and you don't have to really worry about stuff. But the major services, you definitely want to work through it. But yeah, I mean, and you asked, like, has that bit me before? But yeah, it has. Like, you go with either somebody that your boss tells you to go with, or whatever the case is. Like, they're the lowest bid or whatever. Yeah, you get disappointed, and then
So you go on.
well, then you're in a situation where, because it always costs money to change major services like directional, cement, rig contractors, whatever. So if you make a change or you pick up somebody, it's going to cost some amount of money, or whether it's money, time, whatever, to vet a new
Right.
vendor. You're like, okay, well, did they screw up? Because is it partly my fault? Was it just a bonehead move in one of the people in the assembly line, or what was the root cause here? And then you're like, is it worth running him off, or should I give him another shot? Or what's the impact of what happened? Is it something that we can work on, or is it just a catastrophic absolute failure and I have to get rid of them because I can't allow that to happen?
You can't justify having them out there after. Yeah. So
Right.
so your thought process, your philosophy is, look, be competitive with price, but at the same time, this is a partnership. This is a relationship.
Yeah.
We're a business partner in our operations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is that, I mean, do you see that being crucial moving forward, having that same type of a relationship with your vendors?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think the environment that we're in now, it would affect that philosophy and kind of how I make decisions on service companies and vendors, just because Headington is a small company, but we want to, we're not a buy and flip company. We want to be an operator for the long run. We see ourselves having a long operated program, for as long as we can.
Right.
So, with my philosophy, it's more of a long-term type of deal. Like, you might be able to get by with just going low bid on everything if you're just picking up a rig to drill a couple wells and then lay it down.
Right.
But long term, I think you always come out on top. And I mean, and I'm not saying that, like, the right company is always going to be a way high bid, but a lot of times it is. And but I think you get what you pay for in some regards. So, but yeah, I don't see that changing really. are affecting how I make decisions for service companies.
Well, speaking on the service side, moving forward, I mean, what would you want to see out of service companies, or what from your perspective, from your side of the desk, what advice would you have for service companies, I guess, coming out of this however you define what we're in right now? Dumpster fire, shit show, you name it, whatever it is.
Yeah. Man, I mean, I think service companies, and particularly the small ones, should think about staying small and not ramping up too quickly to a point where, you know, they're kind of unorganized and not able to provide a good service because they're stretched thin. And, you know, everyone always has issues with the ups and downs and making moves and when to cut people and when to, you know, kind of downsize with the market. But I would say what I'd like to see is, you know, if you're small, grow organically and don't spread yourself thin when, you know, when the market's good or it gets good really quickly. Concentrate on the things that you do good, and above all, concentrate on picking up the right people. Because I think one of the things that always happens, whether it's like engineers or sales guys or whatever, they end up just putting warm bodies in spots as opposed to, hey, let's hold off for a minute until we find the right guy.
Or girl. It's 2020.
Or girl. Yeah. So, you know, that's the biggest thing. Like, and you see it all the time. And, you know, sometimes it's not obvious, but in most cases, it's pretty obvious that you run into a sales guy. He's like, yeah, I was a, you know, whatever in some other industry. And sometimes those guys work out.
Yeah.
And, you know, they always say like, the guy was a Walmart greeter, you know, 2 weeks ago or whatever. But
we just talked to Tyler Schultz of Headington, and he's like, man, if this doesn't work out, I'm gonna go back to doing Walmart greeting. He's like, that's what I did.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, spend more time, and it, like, that comes from me being a manager at Anadarko and hiring guys and doing recruiting, college recruiting and stuff like that. You can just pick the first person that has an indication that they might be smart or they might be good, but it's gonna bite you in the long run if it's a quick decision, you know, unless you just really, really feel good that he or she is an all around, you know, stud.
Right.
And so if that means that you're gonna have to spend more time, or you're gonna have more work, like you're gonna cover whatever that new person would do for another 6 months or whatever, and you're going to be stretched thin, like, so be it. Because, you know, if you pick up somebody who sucks, you're kind of stuck with them. Depending on the situation, you're either stuck with them or you got to fire them and start over again. And, you know,
well, and also that's the name of the company too. I mean, if your company has a name, a reputation, and you send out some, you know, some jackass who doesn't really know what they're talking about or they don't get along with people, or they can't build that relationship, or they're not being truthful or transparent, as you mentioned before, then it's going to kind of hurt the reputation of the company.
Yeah, 100%. And that does, you know, for some reason, our industry holds grudges on companies because of people,
yes.
right? I
mean,
you got guys, especially in the field, you got guys who, you know, who bleed red or blue. And the reason they do is because one guy, whether he was a field guy or you know, a sales guy or whatever, you know, ruined him like 20 years ago, you know, and you see it all the time. But it's hard not to, though, because you think, the way I think about it is like, well, they hired this guy, you know, so they must have thought he was awesome, because why hire him, you know, unless you think he's good, you know. So if they're hiring guys who suck, then, you know,
that also exposes services companies in another light too. You know, you're talking about red and blue, Crips and blood, but it's like, if you're hiring I mean, if you're hiring someone and let's say it's a good buddy of yours and they just, downturn, they let him go immediately. It's like, oh, I'm never going to use them again. They let my buddy go. I mean, that's kind of, and that also puts him in the penalty box.
Yeah, that's right. Unless, there's a lot of cases, and I mean, I'm seeing this right now, that the guy who gets let go, he's kind of like, it is what it is. And, it's part of the deal. I hadn't been here for that long. So, and it's not like I was sucking at my job, and so if it's something like that, then, it kind of makes sense. It's part of the business. Right. But there's other cases where, and I won't go into companies or names or anything, but where, we get into a situation like we're in right now, and 2 weeks in, a company is going to fire an account manager who's been with the company for 20 years. And I get that, because it's middle management always goes
Right.
first because they make too much money and all that stuff. But like, ask them if they're okay with a pay cut. Ask them, how can we keep this person, because we've had them here for 20 years. They must be doing something right. Because
They have the relationships too. I mean,
yeah,
that's a tough decision for people to make, for companies to make.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so what do you think our industry looks like moving forward I guess I mean, we even tie in the next talking point. But what does it look like for y'all, for Headington, to potentially pick up another rig? What are the economics? What does the environment look like?
Um, you know, we don't have, a lot of people have been asking me that, like, what's it going to take? What does oil need to be at
Right.
for us to pick up activity or pick up rigs or whatever? And for us, it's not necessarily, it's a tough question, number one, but number two, it's not necessarily directly tied to oil price. I think for us, we're small, we don't have any debt. We're definitely hurting right now because, I mean, everyone's hurting,
Yeah.
um, but for us, we don't have a bunch of inventory left from our legacy West Texas assets uh, that we can just go drill. And so, we have some stuff that we want to see some offset uh, production on before we go infill drill. But for us, we don't have a ton of inventory right now, and so we're actively looking to partner up with other operators, JV stuff, or uh, we'll look at acreage positions that someone's trying to get rid of or whatever. But I mean, and we're specifically looking in Delaware Basin. But anyway, so long story short, if we find a deal that is attractive and it's not, a ridiculous price per acre, or something like that, and the other operator wants us to operate it, and that's essentially what we want. We want to operate, because we have a pretty jam up ops team. But
Right.
so if it's the right deal and the right company, we'll look at it, we'll vet it, and if it's good, we'll get into it. And we may curtail or defer completions on stuff, but like, I don't think, and it's all situational, right, and
Right.
depends on all the different factors. But we don't necessarily, we're not going to just not drill because of oil price. I mean, we're definitely going to not complete because of oil price. But to answer your question, it's not oil price based. I guess our operations aren't oil price based. We don't have any debt. We'd like to see it a lot higher, because
Right.
we would be capable of a bigger purchase, or a bigger, like, cost of entry into a deal. We would be more willing to do that for a bigger deal if oil price is better. But anyway, yeah. So Well, let me put it this way. So when we left Delaware Basin in November, December timeframe and moved our rig to Midland Basin, Upton County. We planned on drilling 9 wells. When the oil price deal / coronavirus happened.
Coronavirus?
Yeah, are you familiar?
No, I'll check it out on Reddit. Go on.
Yeah, we'll have to do another podcast about it. But it just so happened that we were on our, we were moving to our last pad when all that stuff kind of happened. So, but all that to say, if all this stuff happened on the first well out of the 9 that we were going to drill in Upton County, we would have still drilled all 9 wells because we needed to drill them eventually anyway. Now we're going to defer the completions until next year, most likely, and that's going to depend on oil price when we decide to do that. But it didn't, or it wouldn't have affected us keeping the rig.
Okay.
Because we were gonna need to drill them anyway.
Okay. So what do you see the industry, I guess, evolving into?
That's kind of a tough question too, but I don't think a whole lot's going to change. I think the big players are going to stay in it. I think the small companies that aren't over leveraged, and that are in good shape financially, I think those kind of things aren't going to change as much, other than they're going to be slower to make decisions. They're going to take a lot more time to do deals and make purchases and things like that. I do think that the PE-backed companies or private equity in general is going to slowly. I think private equity is going to slowly back out of the energy sector, and I guess with that, I think that the bigger PE firms are going to kind of trim some fat and merge a lot of their smaller companies that they fund, and so I think you're going to see a lot less PE involvement in the industry versus 3, 4, 5 years ago when
it was everywhere.
Everybody was just throwing money at acreage and weren't even really evaluating deals the way they should, and just said, hey, everything's going to make oil out here. Doesn't matter. We're going to drill a couple wells. We're not going to choke them back, and they're going to, we're going to make them look like rock stars, and then we're going to turn around and sell this thing and make, $200 million or whatever. I don't think you're going to see that anymore.
Man, I don't think you've seen that in a while, ever since the last downturn.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of companies that, well, okay, so what I also think is going to happen is if there is PE involvement, the deals are going to be structured a lot differently. Like, it's not just going to be, we're going to back this operator, and well, all those deals have a lot of hair on them anyway, but I think all the deals are going to be structured a lot differently in favor of the PE firm.
Right. I can see that. So, okay. Before we get to the message to our audience, let's go back to, I guess, your intro. If you can think of an actual funny story from you starting out, or a good story to kind of brighten people's mood today, what would that be?
Oh man, I got 2, and let me think which one's funnier.
Give them both, dude.
All right. Well, I'll make the first one. I'll make the first one really short.
All right.
So I think I'd been on the rig, like it might have been my first hitch, and so everything's new. The rig's new, like how the people are, like the rig hands,
people interacting. Yeah, it's a completely new world. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of big equipment that I've never seen before and all that stuff. And so I'm on the rig floor with the guy who's training me, and we're tripping out of the hole. We're about to pull the MWD tool out of the UBHO, and the one of the rig hands is handling the pipe, and the driller, I guess they're backing off of a joint, and the driller wasn't quite off of it, and then came up, like pulled the top drive up and came right back down too quickly and just sheared off this one of the rig hand's fingers.
God.
Right? I mean, just quick, just sheared it right off, right? And it's right in front of me. And his finger, like in the glove, right, just falls in the pipe dope bucket. And
that's
I'm
not
like,
funny.
holy,
That's shocking for the first hit.
I'm like, holy shit. And I look at the guy, and he looks down, and he just goes, God damn it. like didn't yell, didn't scream, like, holy shit, that's my finger. He's just like, God damn it. And then he looked at it, and he looked at me, and he's like, hey man, will you grab that and put it in that cup of ice over there? And he had like a styrofoam cup, like of like lemonade or something that he had just finished. And so it was just ice and like lemonade residue. And he was like, hey, will you put that in there? And like, I wish I could have seen my face, right? But anyway.
So he's saying, God damn it, like he found like a hair in his hamburger or cheeseburger.
Well, he was pissed off because he was gonna have to miss work, or he thought he was gonna have to miss work.
Oh,
like that's the only thing he cared about.
That's a hand.
So it's
half
like, oh my God.
90% of a hand.
Yeah. So I was like, geez, man, like these guys are crazy. And so whatever. Somebody took him to the hospital. They sewed his finger back on, and I think he came back and he was on like light duty or something. I was like, this is insane.
Jesus.
But so that was longer than I thought. But second one is like my favorite because it's again just goes to show how like hard the guys in the field are, like the ones who, the rig hands and a lot of the like directional guys that used to be rig hands and tool pushers and all that stuff. But
right.
So we had like a new trainee DD, and it was like his first week, and I had talked to him for a couple of days maybe, and day 2 or 3, he looks over at me and he's like, and this is like, dude chewing on like a piece of wheat, like overalls with no undershirt on,
one of those little straw hats, just
yeah, pretty much. And he looks over at me and he's like, hey, you went to college, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, hey man, so I got this really bad pain in my back. He's like pointing at his, like where his kidneys are. And he's like, it really hurts to pee. And I think I might be like peeing a little bit of blood. And, I just don't know what it is, but I don't want to miss any work because I just started and I just don't want to do that. And I was like, yeah, it sounds like a kidney stone, but I'm not a doctor. Like I went to college.
I didn't go to medical school. I didn't go to Doctor 101 class.
Yeah. And so I was like, so do you think I need to go to the hospital or to the doctor or something? And I was like, well, yeah. I mean, if it's a kidney stone, like you should probably get it checked out. He's like, oh, well, I can't miss work. So he's like, do you think I'm okay until my hitch is over? And I was like,
how the hell am I supposed to know?
Yeah. I was like, I don't know, dude. Like, I mean, my degree was in communications, like, so like another like day or two go by, and it's obviously getting worse. And he's like really slow to walk across location. Like he just, and it like, I don't know, 20 minutes to walk across location to the rig floor. And then, he's taking like 30 minutes when he's trying to piss, and he'll come out and be like, yeah, I tried. I couldn't get anything out. It just hurts too bad. And anyway, this goes on for, I don't know, several days. And finally, probably a week into his hitch or something, he, like, I see him running, like, from it was either from like just the side of the location or something, like wherever he had just peed. No, I know what it was. He was coming from his trailer to my trailer. So I saw him like running up the stairs, whatever. And he just busted open the front door and he goes, "Hey, it came out." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like what came out?" And he was like, the stone thing. And I was like, "How do you know it came out?" And he was like, "Well, I was trying to pee and it hurt really, really bad, but I just pushed and pushed and pushed." And he goes, and then just the, you know, the flow got real strong and I heard it hit the porcelain on the toilet. And I was like,
Oh,
you just passed a fucking stone big enough to hear hit the toilet?
my God.
And he was like, "Yeah, I guess so. But I peed and everything's fine." And I was like, holy shit. Like, I've never had a kidney stone, but people compare it to like childbirth and all kind, or like worse than childbirth.
And they're like microscopic.
Yeah. And they're the ones that you can like use radiation and like, break into little pieces. And,
This dude
but I
just
was
pushes it out.
just push. I mean, they look like sticker burrs, like just, I can't imagine. And he was like, "So I'm fine, right? Like like."
Probably
Yeah,
not.
so.
Probably not, actually. I don't think you are fine. Jesus.
So, I mean, just those guys are a different breed.
They are.
Sure.
They're great guys and girls. So what message would you want to leave our audience that are listening right now? You have anything to share or insight or thoughts or daily motivation?
I don't know about, well, I guess motivation, but like just it's bad for everybody. I'm hearing bad stuff from all sides, I feel pretty like hashtag so blessed that I'm with a small company right now that I feel pretty comfortable where I'm at, but I would just say that to everybody, just hang in there. This is like my third downturn, and there's a lot of guys who are still in the industry that have been through 5 or 6 of these, and just hang in there and do whatever you got to do, and don't spend money, and figure out ways to, like, if you're laid off, ask the bank if you can just make interest payments, and no principal on it, or just get creative and do what you got to do to get through it, because it'll come back. And it's part of the deal when you get into this industry. But this is what I want to keep doing. I love doing what I'm doing, and if I got laid off tomorrow, I'd drive an Uber or do whatever the hell I had to do. But so if you stick with it, like, you'll find something sooner or later.
So this is the kidney stone. We just got to keep pushing through, no matter how painful it is.
That's right. That's how you
until we hear that kaplunk. Well, good. Dan, it's great having you on today, man. I appreciate you coming on, and love to have you back on sometime.
Anytime, man. I appreciate it.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you soon. If you have any questions for Dan or myself, you can reach us at Round the Rotary at cap-petro.com. Again, that's Round the Rotary at cap-petro.com. All right, Dan, thanks a lot. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, man. See you.